You know what's wild to me is Eric and Az will sit around streaming week after week, making clip after clip, talking about how Marvel, DC, Disney, Hollywood keeps hiring people to work for them that aren't true fans, that are unqualified to be talking about the things they're talking about. This is the core and the foundation of the arguments they make to their viewers each time they go on camera. There's no lack of those video clips. You can look around and find them everywhere. They're everywhere. And then he goes and hires someone who knows nothing about his comic books, really, who knows nothing about comic books in general, basic concepts for comic books, hires them to be what is the term here? Part of their video content team. I was reading the little write-up about Gothix here. And in this write-up from just a few days ago, you know what they don't mention? How passionate she is about comic books. How much she knows about comic books. I'm not saying that it has to be a specific comic book. She doesn't need to know every single thing about character X, Y, and Z, but a basic core understanding of comic books would certainly help someone who was hired to be the spokesperson for a comic book company. The reasons they say they hired her: she's authentic and relatable. She's not afraid to shake things up. These are two of the quotes in their article. A fresh perspective, aka she's not versed in comic books. She doesn't know about comic books. Representative of their values. I never want to hear Eric and Az talk about hiring people that are qualified for positions ever again when they pull this. This video clip is shocking. We're going to watch this together. This is shocking. I watched about 3 minutes of this and I was like, I have to make a video about this because this is just mind-blowing that he would let her go on camera to talk about his company and come across so completely oblivious to the stuff she's talking about. This is wild. It's crazy. Trust me, you're going to understand as we watch this video. This is a Katie Did clip. Shout out to Katie Did. There's several videos of her talking, but this one blew my fucking mind. Let's do it.
Mark says, not sure where Eric July hate comes from. I've been in the comic scene for a long time, and I think what he's doing is great. It's because you're not a bitter elitist. That's if I'm being frank, from an outsider looking in, you know, I'm a bit of a normie when it comes to the comic book.
That's because you've listened to everything that he said to you. Not everybody that dislikes Eric or his comic books is an elitist. There's a lot of people criticizing him that are literally not in the comic book industry. But the fact that this was your response tells me that you've only been listening to what Eric has said. So as an outsider, you literally mean just listening to Eric? That's what you're saying here? I have a theory about why she was hired, but I'll save that. I'll save that till we get further in the video.
What he's doing is great. It's because you're not a bitter elitist. That's if I'm being frank, from an outsider looking in, you know, I'm a bit of a normie when it comes to the comic book industry. I'll be very honest. My husband, he knows his stuff.
Then why wasn't he hired for this job? How are you a normie? Let's hire the most normie person we possibly can to be the face of our company online. Someone who's known for gaming, but literally not known for comics at all. Let's hire this person because that makes the most fucking sense. Someone who has no understanding of comic books to chat on camera to comic book fans about our comic books, where people might be coming in and asking basic ass questions about comic books. Let's continue.
So I have started to pick up some things based on what he's reading because I can't buy comics. They're expensive, all right?
She doesn't buy comics because they're expensive. But you're working for a comic book company that arguably has the most expensive individual issues of comics out of a lot of the indie creators. Crazy. This is fucking crazy. The fact that you even said that is insanity to me. It's insanity. Let's continue.
Honest, my husband, he knows his stuff. So I have started to pick up some things based on what he's reading because I can't buy comics. They're expensive, all right? But the good thing about me being the spokesperson for Rippaverse is I only need to know about the Rippaverse.
No, that's not it. That's not all you need to know. You're going to have people coming in. She's laughing about this. You're going to have people coming in asking you questions about Rippaverse and how that other comics affected these characters, or what kind of dream scenario you'd like to see. Who would you like to see Brian Solari fighting? Like, honestly, you need to know those things. You are the spokesperson. You're going to be the face of their video content creation. And she thinks it's funny. Also, it's not a really good look to tell a bunch of people, potential customers of the Rippaverse, that comics are too expensive to collect. That seems like a really bad fucking idea, Gothix. But let's continue.
He's reading because I can't buy comics. They're expensive, all right? But all the good thing about me being the spokesperson for Rippaverse is I only need to know about the Rippaverse. I don't need to know about what's going on at DC and Marvel and all these other things. I'll read them, but I don't need to know it like the back of my hand.
But you just admitted you don't even read them at all. You just admitted that. So I don't know what that comment was. Was that sort of like bells going off in your head that you need to like make it seem like it's less of a problem? That's crazy. And again, when I say crazy, I mean in the most cartoon way possible. Let's continue.
Let's see. How much is a comic book? I think it depends on the cover.
What? Holy shit! You're doing a live stream promoting yourself as the video content creator for the Rippaverse, and you don't even understand the pricing structure of the comic books. You should never have turned on your camera wearing this hoodie as a representative of the Rippaverse. That is insane and irresponsible.
I think certain covers are more expensive. I like that hoodie. Where'd you get that? I've always wanted one. Well, you can get a hoodie like this from Rippaverse.com. Just click on their merch button, or is it shop? I don't know. And you can pick yourself.
So I guess relatable means not knowing where to go to get the merch that you're trying to sell to people. You're the person that's I don't have an issue with people being relatable. I think it's kind of charming. But you were hired as someone with a big following to bring them in to the Rippaverse. And you're supposed to make us believe that you're qualified to be doing this while you're joking about the fact you don't know where to buy the merch at. As always, let's continue.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Some variant covers are more expensive than others, yes. Cover D is generally the cheapest cover. Gothix being a grifter again. It does happen sometimes. It just comes.
So you're letting the people in the chat tell you how the pricing structure works for the company that you're working for. Shouldn't you have probably done some research on that before you started representing the Rippaverse? Because it's really not that difficult. They don't have hundreds of thousands of comic books. So a little bit of research before you did this probably would have done you a lot of favors.
Comes out like grifter. But yeah, no, I think, like I said earlier in the stream, I know you weren't here, Mark, but I think a lot of the hate for Eric and the Rippaverse, honestly, it comes down to, I hate to say it, but jealousy, bitterness. Because if you remove the fluff and ask, what's the point of all the hate mail and the hate videos and the harassment? Like, what's the point of any of that? You don't.
What's the point of Eric's business model? Let's really get to the root of this. Eric makes videos criticizing companies for hiring unqualified people and making shit merchandise. And then what does he do? He makes the most shit merchandise using assets, mistake after mistake after mistake in his comic books, rushing out content because he's more worried about when it gets to the customer opposed to making a quality comic book. He could do both, but he doesn't. He's more wrapped up in the fact that he can just get all this stuff out quickly. So he criticizes the bigger companies for doing that. He criticizes them for hiring people that don't know what they're doing. And then we have people like yourself who gets on here supporting a company that you don't know the quality of the stuff they're making because you're not a comic book fan. So you're completely unqualified in that department. And you also don't know basic stuff about the website, the pricing structure, how comic books have different covers, simple stuff like that that you should know before you start representing a company. None of that has to do with jealousy. I am not a comic book maker. I don't have a comic book business. I'm not somebody working in the same industry as Eric July. I'm not even making the same kind of content as Eric July. I am just someone that has to deal with all of the hateful queer shit that he put out. And so now I get wrapped up into this stuff. So that's how I got here. It literally has nothing to do with jealousy. But you saying that tells me that you've only been listening to what Eric has been saying about everybody else.
Like what he writes? Okay. Message has been received. Can we move on? Or is there something else you're trying to prove? You know? It has to be jealousy or it has to be lack of purpose. Maybe both.
It has to be, based on her comprehensive criteria of comic books and comic book related things. Clearly, people are criticizing Eric for comic books that she knows backwards and forwards, so she can attest to the writing quality and the actual art and all of those other things. So it has to be jealousy or people who are just being dicks to him. That's all it can be, right? This is Eric July 101. This is, again, I have a theory to why she's working for Eric, so we're going to come back to that in just a moment. Let's continue.
It might be both. Because from my perspective, if you have something to create.
But you don't have to be a creator to criticize something you're purchasing. For example, if I go into a restaurant and I order food and I get the food and I don't like the food, I know that I don't like it without having to be a chef. I can try whatever it is and go, you know what? I don't like this. It tastes really bad to me. I don't like this restaurant. I don't like the way this chef runs this restaurant. All of those are fair criticisms without me actually having to be a chef or a restaurant owner. So that is a dumb deflection. It is a awful argument. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't hold up.
You know, let the market decide. Create. And if you can't create, I guess you can refurbish, which is...
Well, we can turn that around and say that's Eric, right? Because Eric doesn't let the market decide when he talks about Marvel, DC, all these other brands. He talks about how shit they are, how bad they're going to be, and even when they perform well, he never recants anything that he says. He just rolls along with it. So if we're letting the market decide, then where did Eric's platform come from when it comes to anti-woke advocacy? He says that's not the case. But if you look at his channel, clearly he's aligned himself with anti-woke people. So there is some of that market there in his comic books. Maybe not 100% of it, but a vast majority of it are people that come through looking for anti-woke stuff. So even if Eric's personal stance isn't anti-woke, that is definitely the client base that are buying his comic books.
What a lot of commenters do these days. They just refurbish. In essence, just talk about other people. Grim.
Which is essentially what Eric and Az does, is what you do. It's what we all do. So I don't know why you're kind of laughing that off starkly. It's literally what commentary is on YouTube. So congratulations, you understand what that is now. I don't see how that's a defense of anything or any criticism that Eric has received.
I think that's a question of sub.
Let's jump back.
These days, they just refurbish. In essence, just talk about other people. Grim, I think that's a question of subjectivity. Shit comics implies there's a standard for good comics. There is
a standard. There are certain things that can be subjective. Like you can talk about things like the story, the art, things like that. But when we're talking about something like mistakes in comic books, literal mistakes editorially, mistakes in the way the page layout is, mistakes in things like color and shading and things like that. There are things that are literally objective mistakes in comic books. We're not talking about just the creative process. We're talking about spelling errors, editing issues, issues with the art where the actual art is 3D assets. They're not actually drawn onto the page, so they're incorrectly placed in the scenes. There's things you can look at that are objective. The subjective stuff isn't necessarily the problem that a lot of people have with Eric's comic books. But you would have to understand comic books and the kind of comics that Eric makes to answer this question. But you don't know that because you're not a comic book consumer, you don't read comic books, and you're not even well-versed in Rippaverse stuff. And you're literally their content creator video person.
I think that's a question of subjectivity. Shit comics implies there's a standard for good comics. So who makes that standard for good comics? Is it the market or is it your own opinion? If it's the market, well, from my perspective, Rippaverse continues to grow, so the market has spoken.
That's actually false. That's actually false. But anyway, let's talk about that for a second. Another reason why I'm making this video, because of the hypocrisy of Eric and the way he runs his company. If we're talking about the difference between good and bad, and you're saying it's subjective, then what is Eric and Az's podcast about? What do? They talk about how shit Marvel is, how shit Disney is, even when they make success in terms of like sales. So if you're judging success based on just the financial aspects of it, then quality is a completely different conversation. But that would require you to think outside of the way you are looking at this, the way you're viewing this. Money and success based on the market does not equal good. Just because something is popular and makes money doesn't mean that it's a quality product. There's lots of examples of companies that are very successful that make mid-level to low-level products that just aren't very good, but they've managed to corner the market. That's just the way it is. So saying that something is good because it quote unquote has a market and it sells, that's a false statement.
If it's your perspective, well, that's a different conversation. Now the question is, why is your perspective on the standard of what constitutes as a good comic important? Either way, you can like what you like. You know, your opinion is your opinion. Not everyone has the same taste. But from my perspective, I think it would be more, what's the word? It would be more beneficial to actually, let me put it from a different perspective. I think Kamala, the Biden administration, worst, terrible, trash. But I still prayed for them. Why?
Oh, the religious stuff. This is what got me into a back and forth with her on Twitter in the beginning. I hate when people apply religion to any kind of like mass marketed products or anything along those lines, because you just assume that everybody understands religion and faith and the way it works in your life. You can't sit here and tell somebody that their own personal opinion, why should it matter? And then you act as if religion is something that's relatable to everybody. It's not. That's a dumb argument. It's a very dumb argument.
Because as a citizen of the United States of America, I want my leaders to do well. If my leaders do well, the country does well. So I still prayed for them, even though they sucked at their job. You may not like anyone's writing, a particular person in comics. You don't like their writing? You don't like their comics? Okay. What seems more logical? To hope the best for that person, which would then fix the state of the comic industry, or, you know, do whatever it is you're doing.
So why don't you tell your boss that? Why don't you tell Eric that? If I go and I look at any streams that you and Eric are on, you're going to tell me that anytime you have talked about Marvel or DC or any video games or whatever, that you don't trash them for being bad and that you only wish the best for those? You only wish the best for Marvel and DC and Disney and, you know, whatever video game company is being attacked for DEI at that point in time? You only wish the best for them, or do you let your voices be heard? Do you use your platform to actually get your criticism out there to start conversations and make people aware? Because essentially what you're arguing here is that people in the chat right now that are criticizing Eric should shut up and pray for Eric because they want the best for Eric and best for the comic book industry. Well, why don't you tell your boss and other people associated with Rippaverse to do the same thing for everybody else? Because otherwise it's a double standard. But that should come as no surprise when it comes to people working for Eric July.
Like I don't see it. It looks messy to me. Knight says Rippaverse used computer graphics in early comics, passed it off as being hand-drawn. Eric denied it until sleuths found the exact 3D models his artist used, and then Eric changed his tune and defended it. I don't know anything about that.
I mean, you probably should, because you are the content creator spokesperson now for the Rippaverse. So at the very least, you should understand some of the past issues that they've had coming in to the fucking internet space to talk about the Rippaverse as the spokesperson. But I guess that's too much to ask, because clearly she's totally qualified for this job and we're all stupid.
I don't know anything about that. But again, I don't think that
You're thinking hard because you realize it's a question of integrity. Somebody lied about something their artists were doing, and then got found out that their artist was doing it and then changed their story afterwards. That is a question of integrity. And you're struggling a little bit here to actually answer this question without coming across like someone who is speaking out against Eric July, because now you're working for him. So anything that Gothix says about Eric July moving forward should be considered as an employee's stance on Eric July. It is no longer an unbiased opinion about Eric and his company. Now she is getting paid by Eric to do exactly what she is doing. Nothing she says about him can be taken than anything more than face value.
But again, I don't. Yeah, I don't think that.
Come on.
I'm trying to phrase this in a nice way.
No, you're trying to think of a way to skate the issue. Come on.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you're doing that because you don't have a correct answer. You don't have an answer that is going to come across without you criticizing Eric. So whatever answer you give is going to be a complete deflection. I don't know if you're going to give an answer. Maybe this gets cut and jumps on to the next thing. I don't think you're going to give an answer that adequately responds to what the person is saying, because this is not an accusation. It's not a criticism. It is literally a fact that actually happened.
I don't know anything about that. I can't confirm or deny because I didn't hear anything about that. I haven't seen it. But I don't think even that, if that were true, warrants any of the vitriol that this guy gets.
So you think someone who made comic books, charged an arm and a leg for them, got found out that their artists were cutting corners by using 3D assets, was accused of doing that, made fun of the people who accused him of doing that, totally denied that it was being done, stood up and says that he would stand behind his artist, then gets proven without a shadow of a doubt that they were 3D assets, goes on podcasts, gets cornered by people about those, finally admits that it really did happen, and then changes his tune and acts like it's an industry standard. You don't think that that changes anything, any of the criticism that people have for Eric July? You think that if you're someone that purchased a comic book that was told that everything was going to be quality, it was going to be good, it was going to be up there, you don't think that those people receiving comic books with a questionable level of quality in the art style, particularly in these 3D assets, do not have a right to be upset for paying for something that they thought was going to be at a caliber of like Marvel or DC, coming from an indie guy, somebody they supported? They don't have a right to be angry or upset that they spent their hard-earned money. They might have worked a whole month just to make that extra money to buy these comic books. You don't think they have a right to be really angry that what they got wasn't great and then the guy lied about it? That's a shocker.
I don't know anything about that. I can't confirm or deny
shocker.
because I didn't hear anything about that. I haven't seen it. But I don't think even that, if that were true, warrants any of the vitriol that this guy gets. I don't understand. That's where I stand on it. It's like, if you...
So you're clearly saying that someone can be an absolute 100% liar as a business owner, lie to his customers and his fans about something, and your response to that is you don't really understand or accept that the amount of people that are angry with him is justified based on being a liar and selling a product and being completely disingenuous with his customers. You don't think that's an issue, and you're the new spokesperson, video content creator spokesperson for the Rippaverse. That's crazy.
Let me put it this way. The way people are acting, whether or not he did something wrong, whether or not your criticisms are correct or wrong.
It's not a criticism. It's something that actually happened. A criticism would be that I don't like the way he runs his business because he lied. He absolutely did 100% lie. It's not a criticism. It actually happened.
The way that people are acting is almost as if they own the industry.
No, they own this product. If there's somebody that purchased these comic books and owned these comic books criticizes Eric July and the Rippaverse for doing that, they don't own the industry. This is deflection. This is a straw man argument. No one is saying that. You are making that up. You are building up this argument about some industry breaking situation when it's literally just Eric lying about the way art was created in his comic book. So you are deflecting and building a straw man.
And no one does. So, again, instead of letting the market decide, you, maybe not you specifically, I don't mean to call you out, but in general, people have made it like their task to like tear down this company. I just don't, not really a good time spent, in my opinion.
So here's the deal. If you believe that what Eric is doing is quality, if the comic books he's putting out are quality and everything he's doing is good quality, and the company is doing well, as according to you, you say it's growing and growing and growing. I disagree, but you're saying that it's growing and growing and growing. Then all of these complaints and criticisms are not actually tearing the company down, which would mean that it's insignificant in terms of the bigger picture of the Rippaverse, if in fact the company is doing well. So why are you wasting your time arguing with somebody who has criticism of the Rippaverse if you don't think their criticisms are of any value and you don't believe that the company is suffering at all? Why are you wasting your time doing that? Why are you having such a hard time rationalizing this comment made by somebody on the stream?
Opinion. Okay, so we're just coming at you with reasons, and you're just saying you don't think it warrants it. I'm trying. You're coming to me as if I'm an HR person, and that's not what I was hired to do. Okay.
Okay, so I want her, hopefully she'll explain exactly what her role is, because I think, before she even says it, let me tell you what I think she's going to do. I think she is a person who's supposed to be making video content promoting the Rippaverse, talking about their upcoming things, talking about their comic books, their cartoons, their trailers, whatever it is they're doing, hyping up the Rippaverse. That's what I think her job is supposed to be. However, when you are on a live stream with people in the chat organically chatting with you about the Rippaverse, this is why it's extremely important for you to understand the ins and outs of what you're supposed to be representing. Like, for example, where to go get the merch, how much the comic books cost. I think those are things that a basic knowledge of a Rippaverse spokesperson should be. You don't have to be HR. Nobody's asking you to do that, at least not from what I've seen. But you should at least understand where to get the products from that you're wearing and how much the comic books cost, or at least the basic structure of the company. But I want to see what you actually say your job is, because I'm very curious to what you're supposed to be doing. Because right now, you're talking with customers. You are talking with potential customers and customers of the Rippaverse, and you're coming across like you don't understand what you're talking about, which is not a good look for somebody that was just hired for the company, especially somebody with a big following like Gothix.
Saying you don't think it warrants it. I'm trying. You're coming to me as if I'm an HR person, and that's not what I was hired to do. Okay. So here are my positions, in case anyone is curious about my positions. I believe
let's go.
The company has a right to do whatever they want with their company. I believe a consumer has a right to consume whatever they want.
Is that a position, a job position, or is that just your personal beliefs? Because I don't have any issue with your personal beliefs can be whatever they want. What is your actual job role? I have a theory on what I think her job is actually going to be. Again, I think I know why she's working for Eric and why he selected her, but let's hear what she has. Hopefully she explains this.
I believe someone has the choice to refrain from consuming, and someone has a choice to criticize. And so you guys are criticizing, whether it's correct or it's not, false, whatever. You have
Criticism doesn't require people to be correct. Let's just put that out there. Somebody can give good or bad criticism, but at the end of the day, it's just criticism. And you have to decide if it's constructive enough for you to change what you're doing if you're a business owner. That's a choice you have to make. There is no right or wrong. It is just criticism.
have the right to criticize. My question to you, the criticizers, is what now?
Well, people that are criticizing hope that criticism will be heard and that some of it will break through and changes are made to a company or a brand that they care about. That's what criticism is supposed to do. However, what you are getting frustrated with is you believe the criticism that is being received while you're streaming here, or this video, whatever it is you're doing in terms of the Rippaverse, you think that it's unbeneficial and unhelpful for the Rippaverse, which I would argue a lot of the criticism that Eric and Az and you and a lot of people have given towards the other comic book industries, the gaming industry, whatever, is also, it falls along the lines of unhelpful criticism. It doesn't really add anything to the conversation. So what you're doing now is you in this position working for the Rippaverse are realizing what it's like to be on the other side of that, to be on the other side of the aisle where your criticism is about a company that is making merchandise that people actually pay for. This isn't just somebody watching your stream, sending you super chats. This isn't somebody who might go to your merch shop and buy a t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever. This is an actual brand that is trying to branch out and make money from consumers that may not be the casual YouTube audience. You're not doing a convincing job with this so far. And let me run back here a little bit. I don't think you've actually explained what your job position is. Let's go back another 10 seconds. Let's see if you explain what your job position is, what you were hired for, because it's not very clear to me yet.
Whatever they want with their company. I believe a consumer has a right to consume whatever they want. I believe someone has the choice to refrain from consuming, and someone has a choice to criticize. And so you guys are criticizing, whether it's correct or it's not, false, whatever, you have the right to criticize. My question to you, the criticizers, is what now? That's my only question. What now? You criticized. I heard it. Eric heard it. What now? And that's the question that I can't get an answer to, is getting to the root of it. Is it you want to criticize to help Eric, or you want to criticize just to complain?
Well, you said earlier in this clip that critics are all entitled elitist people. They're all jealous people. That's what you said. You said people criticizing Eric were jealous, elitist, other people who want to be doing what Eric is doing. They want to have the success that Eric is having. That is what you categorize critics as earlier in this stream. The same people that Eric would call detractors. You said that earlier. But now you're sort of engaging with people and you're saying, what do you expect out of this? What do you want to do? Do you want it to help the company or hurt the company? Well, I don't know, Gothix. You accused everyone in this stream that's criticizing Eric of being something that they're not, but now you're asking them if they actually want the company to do better. It seems to me like you might have made a mistake and misrepresented the criticism that was happening. We're almost at the end of this video, and you just had a perfect opportunity to explain what your job is. I know what your job is based on some deductive reasoning here, and I'm going to say what that is at the end of this clip here. But let's see where you go with this.
Because that's what it comes off as. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me from an outside perspective. And like I said,
you're not an outsider. You work for the company. You are no longer an outsider. Saying from your outside perspective, you are no longer an outsider. You are a representative of the Rippaverse. The fact that you said that, I think twice now in this video, tells me that you're still not certain what you're supposed to be doing at the Rippaverse.
I have been doing content since 2018, and I've definitely had my own personal adventures with people complaining about things that I've said online. And again, same thing. I've heard you. Now what? What now? Joseph says, why bring up old drama? Regardless, everyone makes mistakes. It just seems like a waste of time to me. I don't understand the goal. I would love to know what the goal is.
The goal is hopefully for the comic book company or for Eric to admit that these mistakes were made and correct them. I'm assuming people that actually like the Rippaverse are saying this in hopes that Eric will change the issues that the company has, that he will hear what the fans are saying. But we know that's not going to happen. However, so many people that support Eric really want that to happen. They want him to listen to them.
Like, I think of all the things that we could be doing if we put our energy into creating instead of destroying. Create something new, destroy something. That's your choice. Do what you want. But like I said, I'm not HR.
Thank you, Katie did for that clip. Look, let's break this down here quickly. You were talking to customers. You're telling customers that if they don't like the way Eric is doing something, they should just they should make their own, right? You said create or destroy, right? That's the only two options, according to you. I would say there's another option. Another option is being someone that is a customer to a brand and having a criticism of a subpar product. I think that's the third option. That's the third one, but you guys never look at that. It's always one polar opposite of the other. That's a big problem there. So let me tell you why I think Gothix works for Eric July now. And I said earlier that I have it figured out. I'm still sort of trying to figure it out, but I think I have a good understanding of what her position is because she didn't make it very clear here. Eric has given up fighting with people. He doesn't make videos about that anymore. He doesn't have the time to do it anymore. He doesn't have time to go back and forth with people anymore. He really just wants to run his company, be the owner of the Rippaverse, and not deal with any of the stuff online. He still does his stream with ads, as far as I know. But he wants someone that represents him in this space in the way that he used to engage. So he has hired Gothix to be this person to argue with folks on the internet. To be like that stone wall between all of his detractors and his comic book business. So she's going to be making videos, promoting the Rippaverse, live streaming, and fighting with customers, fighting with detractors. I can almost guarantee that is the kind of content she's going to be making because she's not a comic book fan. She's clearly only getting comic books secondhand from her husband. She doesn't know anything about the Rippaverse. She doesn't know where to get merch from. She doesn't know the cost of the comic book. She doesn't know the difference in the covers. All of these things are very obvious to me. She doesn't even understand the criticisms of the Rippaverse because she doesn't know all of the Rippaverse history. And we're talking about just a couple of years of stuff. So if her qualifications, if I'm thinking about this correctly, if you look at it from the standpoint of that, like she's just here to engage with fans and argue with trolls, argue with customers, argue with detractors, she's just here to make that kind of content, then she is totally suited for this job. And it makes perfect sense why she was hired. Because otherwise, she does not have the credibility at all or the knowledge of comics at all, be it Rippaverse or any other comic book company, to actually work for a comic book company at this level. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It feels to me like she is here specifically to be the face of the Rippaverse in the sense of like making videos about this kind of stuff. And you totally failed here. This is one of many clips. I'm gonna look at the other ones too, but you've totally failed here. You have failed to instill any kind of faith in people coming through for the Rippaverse because you spent in this clip 9 minutes engaging with people, telling them why their criticism of products they have purchased or are looking to purchase means nothing. And that your solution to that is to either not buy his comic books or to create your own. If that's what your solution is to that, that is really bad customer interaction. This is not good. The only reason this would be good is if Eric likes the fact that she's arguing with his detractors. That's the only way this makes any sense. Otherwise, totally unqualified for the job, and Eric and Ash should never, ever in the future on their podcast talk about the fact that people who are unqualified are being hired to work for these major studios.